Alright everyone, I wanted to make a video on how I assemble these pneumatic assist kits so that if you ever take yours apart, you can maybe watch this video and see how I put them back together so that you know what you need to do. I'm also going to take note of some idiosyncrasies of the kit that you might not be aware of unless you've done 50 of these like I have. And alright, I'll just show you everything that goes in the box and how to test the pressure and everything like that. So with that, let's get started. First thing we're going to do is put the O-rings on this is the piston that actually moves in and out to adjust the pressure. So we're going to need a number 8 and a number 12 O-ring for this. So number 8 goes on the bottom part and number 12 goes on the top part. And these are just standard rubber O-rings, diameter 70. So you can get them pretty much at your local hardware store or anything like that. I recommend getting them from an industrial supplier. They'll probably be better quality, but in a pinch you can probably get some from your local hardware store. So one thing to note on these is the reg seat is a piece of 90 durometer urethane rubber that has been super glued in. So, and it's very resilient to any kind of tearing or anything from the set screw sealing it, and it's also very tolerant of any scratches or dirt or debris. This might be a little bit actually softer than most reg seats. So this is going to seal pretty well. If it's going to seal, it's going to seal pretty well. So if you have an overpressure situation that I'll talk about a little bit more later, it's probably not going to be because of this seal. Okay, so we're going to drop one of our springs on here, and this is what they call a wave spring. And the reason I picked this wave spring, even though it's a little bit more expensive, is because you get a longer distance of travel per turn of your set screw. So you get a little bit finer adjustment than you would with, say, a Belleville spring or spring washer or something like that, like you would typically see. And this is one of the few sizes that the few kind of springs that would fit into this area in this regulator. So I give you a part number where you can get these off of an industrial supplier. You need to get packs of 3 of them, but it's probably worth it. If you get 3 of them and put them in your box, you'll have them forever. But you'll never really need to do that unless you lose this one or break it. So, okay, one of those on there. And the next thing I do is take some of this grease, and the grease that I use on all my stuff is this Super Lube. It's a Teflon based grease, synthetic grease, and it works really good on these regulators. It works pretty good on pretty much every marker that I run, so I recommend getting a tube of this. A tube of this will probably last you forever, and it's like $6. So if you want to re-grease this thing, this is probably the grease. This is the grease I recommend. So I get a little bit of the grease on the Q-tip and just kind of wipe it around on the inside, just so that there's some grease in there before I put the piston in. And you'll notice on the reg housing here that there is a little vent hole, and that vent hole ends up basically where this spring is, so that if you have if you have any problems with air venting or leaking out of that hole, then either your top or your bottom seal on your reg piston is probably bad. Okay. So make sure that's in there good and tight. These are standard O-rings for autocockers. So I think they are size 1/13. And put one on the front, one on the back. And now we put in a set screw. And I'll show you the kind of Loctite that I use in a minute, because you need to let this set up for a few minutes before you can check the pressure with the pressure testers. So I put a drop on here. Too much is better than not enough on this, and I make sure I get the Loctite all the way around the threads. It probably would get all the way around the threads anyhow, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. And you put this in up until there's like 1.5 threads showing. So something like that. Hopefully you can see that. And now put some grease on the front three-way fitting. This is the main guide rod, the three-way core, the pretty much do-it-all of this whole assembly here. So that just screws on. And some of these get tight, that not aligned with the other flaps, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. The threads aren't indexed so that it gets flat or it gets tight right when they line up. So don't try to over tighten it to make them flat or anything like that. Just take them where it ends up and you'll be fine. Alright, now we have to wait for this Loctite to set up for a minute or so. And while we do that, I'll talk to you about the Loctite that I use. This is Loctite 222MS, low strength sealing Loctite. It's actually purple in color, and this does a really good job at sealing threads. I use it on these threads specifically because Teflon tape, there's just not enough room, and it's a lot easier to apply. I also use this on my macro line fittings and any other place that I need the screws to either seal or not vibrate loose. And this is a little bit better than blue Loctite, especially on these smaller threads like these 1032s here, or grip frame threads or anything like that, because it's low strength, so it's not going to seize your screw into the hole so hard that you're going to strip it trying to get it out with an Allen key later. So, alright, I think that might be it. One last thing to note is these brass screws actually help this Loctite. There's a chemical reaction that goes on to set this Loctite, and this brass, it does an excellent job of having this set up, and it sets up in 2-3 minutes maybe max, and you'll be ready to go. So I'll get right back here. These are the pressure testers that I use. I have a high pressure tester and then a low pressure tester for more accuracy. The first time I try it, I always try it on the high pressure tester, because this goes up to 400 psi. I can never, if I overpressure the regulator, I won't blow this gauge out. And the low pressure one here is just to make sure that it's perfect. You don't need to use that, but I recommend using high accuracy and low accuracy ones. And this is my pressure tester setup. And basically what this does is mimic the front end of your autococker. So this is your high pressure regulator set at 300 psi, and this is the front end of your gun basically, and it is threaded so that it'll take this in here. So you just go like this, and there's going to be a bit of a leak that you're going to hear, and that leak is actually coming from this joint. So it's not leaking up here, it's leaking back here, and so just ignore the sound. But so we take the high pressure tester and we just put it over the front here. So this is where the pressure is going to come out on this front hole, and you're going to cover up these two O-rings with this pressure tester and just turn the pressure on, and you'll see it goes to somewhere, I don't know if you're going to be able to read it, but between 0 and 100 psi, and that's about where we want to start out. So now we can use the low pressure tester and get exactly what pressure we're at. So we're at low pressure tester, and we're about 55 psi, and that's just a little bit low. I like to be between 55 and 65 psi on your LPR pressure. That seems to work with every RAM combination I've come up with so far. So I try to set all of these at exactly 60 psi when they come from me. So what you need to do, if you want the pressure to go up, you're going to need to screw the screw out. If you need pressure to go down, you need to screw the screw in. So we're going to go for 5 psi, we're going to go about a quarter turn. And screw this back in. Now you can do this with your autococker. You just need to leave all the other parts off of it, so then you can just screw it on by hand and get it kind of tight, and it won't leak. So now I'm going to go back to the high pressure tester again, just in case I move the reg seat too far and it overpressures. I don't want to blow out the low pressure gauge. So that looks like it's sealed, everything's looking good. So it's kind of hard to see with the bubble on there, but we're right at maybe 61 psi, 60 and a half maybe. I'd call it 61. So quarter turn is about 5 psi on your pressure. So alright, so this one here is checked, and it's pretty much ready to get the handle put on it. So put this tester stuff back away. Now, one thing I'll note here is on the top part of these handles, there's 2 set screws, and under these 2 set screws are wee little O-rings. These are 003 O-rings, the same size O-rings as go on your 3-way shaft, and what they're doing here is just sealing these threads with an O-ring. So kind of put that in there, shove this in. Now these screws, again, since they have an O-ring in there, they don't really have to be all that tight. But when you're putting them in, when you're putting these set screws in, be very sure that you don't cross thread them. These handles are very hard to make, and I try to make big batches of them, and I don't make them that often. So don't screw up your handle. So the threads are actually at an angle, so you don't want to try to go in like this with the screw. It actually goes in something like this, because the hole goes through the top into here and into this one, and then the other one goes through the top and into this one. That's how we get the porting where we need it to be. So just be careful about those, or better yet, it's going to come to you assembled like this. Don't take it out. It would be your best bet. Now we're going to put a spring. This is just a standard spring, standard compression spring. It's a little bit heavier than what a normal pump spring would be, but opted for a little bit stiffer spring. I personally like stiffer pump strokes, but you're only moving these about 1/8 of an inch. So you really don't want to be pumping the marker by moving around or anything, because you have an extra super light spring in there. So we'll drop this right down the top hole, and we'll put a little bit of grease on the three-way shaft, the main guide rod, whatever you want to call it. And then the first thing I do is I just put this in here and just double check the movement, make sure it's nice and smooth. Make sure the grease is nice and worked into the handle. So that feels good. And now we take one of the lower guide rods, and these are threaded 1/4-20 at the bottom and 1032 in the front. So if you were to lose this screw, this is a 1032 1-inch button socket head cap screw. So that's what you need. If you lose one, you can go to the hardware store and just get another one. So that goes in there like that. Take an 1/8 inch Allen key, just screw that in there. Now, all of your kits are going to come with no Loctite on either this or the 1032 screw. I would recommend one of the first things you do once you have everything assembled and on the gun and everything's lined up correctly is to take this bottom guide rod out and put a drop of either this purple Loctite or probably better yet, probably a drop of blue Loctite on this thread. And then on the adjustment thread, the 1032 thread, I would put a drop of this purple Loctite, so that whenever you need to adjust it, you don't accidentally unscrew the bottom rod when you don't want to do that. So I just double check this. These need to be, you'll have to fine tune these once you get them, because you'll have to take this handle off to put everything together. But as a starting point, I like to make sure that the Allen key kind of fits in between the handle and the regulator body. And once that's done, I check for the movement again, make sure there's no binding. So that moves pretty smooth. And then when you need another one of these 1032 button head socket cap screws, goes into the little Hitman tang, and there's a curve on the top of this tang that matches the radius of the handle. So now there's only 1 or 2 threads sticking out into this, and I've never had a problem with it. If you're going to take a hard dive, you might pull these threads out, and then you'll have to get a little bit longer screw. But these threads don't need to be tight, and there's really not much force going on here, so 1 or 2 threads has worked good for me for the past 2.5 years. So there you go. That's pretty much the kit as you are going to get it. And inside the box, you're also going to get a foot of clear LPR hose, a pump rod that is very similar to a CCM pump rod, but with the addition of an auto trigger hole. So these auto trigger will take CCM auto trigger screws and everything like that, so they'll fit on your pump that you already have. And also, I'm going to be throwing in a barrel cover with my logo on it and everything, so that you can do a little bit of advertising for me. And that's pretty much it. And I don't have too many more of these to assemble, and they'll be ready by the end of the month. assuming you're watching this in March of 2015. Alright guys, thanks a lot. If you have any other questions, you can get me on MCB, and my screen name on there is PJD10684. I have a section in the Airsmiths section of MCB, and you can post your questions there, or questions, comments, or anything. Of course, you can always post them in the bottom here, in the comment section. I'll try to get back to you, but the best way to contact me is probably via MCB or Paintball Nation. Paintball Nation username is Nerve, NERVE 2030, and you can contact me on there, or I'm also on Custom Caulkers or Facebook, or you can just email me, and whatever way you like to contact me, you can get a hold of me. Alright guys, thanks a lot for watching, and I hope you enjoy your kit. I forgot to do this in the middle of the recording, but I'm also going to have some of these pressure testers up for sale when the kits go on sale, and there'll be probably about 25 of them to go, and they're going to be $10 or so, something like that. But I'm also going to put the plans to make your own one of these. If you happen to have a lathe or know somebody who has a lathe, you could probably even make one of these on a drill press. It's super simple to make. But I'm going to make the plans freely available, so if you don't want to buy one when you buy the kit or anything like that, then you can always just make one yourself. What it'll be is just this aluminum part here that goes over top of the three-way. It'll just be that part there. The pressure, the gauges you'll have to get yourself, but like I said, I'll make this design freely available to anybody who wants one. Alright, thanks.